Dana, we appreciate a couple of minutes. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. First and foremost, what's been the reaction there in Youngstown to the news that Bo was leaving to come back to LSU?
Well, last week that report came out of footballscoop.com on Monday, and I actually texted Bo about it last week, and I said, hey, any truth to it? And he responded, no. But I think as the week went on and things started to happen, I began to hear a little bit more that this was a possibility. And I actually talked to Bo on the phone yesterday, and he says it was a difficult decision, but it was an opportunity he couldn't pass up. And certainly his experience down at LSU, from 2005 to 2007, I think was a big part of it. And I think, Matt, one of the big keys in this is, his family's on board with this. I mean, Bo's a Youngstown guy. His wife is from here. His one daughter is still in school at Cardinal Mooney, where Bo and his wife went to school. And I thought that would be the one thing that may hold him back from taking a job, out of state in a job like LSU. But, his family was on board with this decision. I heard his daughter may want to go to school down there next year. So it was a perfect fit. And when you're talking, $2.3, $2.4 million a year compared to the $200,000 he was getting here. I mean, that's an offer that a lot of coaches probably wouldn't pass up.
Man, I don't know how anybody passes that up. Not everything's not all about money, as you talked about family considerations there, but that's certainly a heck of a lot to pass on. What about? Do you know anything about Bo's ambition? He's only 51. Does he want to be a Power 5 head coach again?
Well, I think he missed it. I mean, when he came to Youngstown, he came from Nebraska, and obviously that was a bad situation, out in Nebraska. He had a chance to come back here, and I think the attitude around here was that Bo was going to, put this program back on the map, so to speak, because, when Jim Tressel was the head coach, they won 4 national championships at the FCS level in the 90s, and really it never turned out to be that way. Bo went to the national championship game in 2016, his second season, and lost to James Madison, and, he was 33-28, had 2 winning seasons. In 17 he was 6-5, and in 16 he was 12-4. Really struggled this year. I mean, injuries were part of it in 18. I mean, they had a lot of injuries, and that's not an excuse. But this year was a disappointing season. I mean, Youngstown State kind of wants to be on that parameter of being a national championship contender every year, and Bo went to the playoffs one time in 5 years. So I think he kind of felt he wanted to get back at the big time college, and there were some other opportunities that I've heard. He passed on a defensive coordinator's position in the NFL, and LSU was very, very. They wanted Bo. I mean, he told me he turned it down 3 times and finally got this final offer and had to take a look at it a little more serious. And he met with the athletic director at Youngstown State, to my understanding, for about 3 hours on Sunday. And, Bo's pushing for his brother Carl to become the head coach at Youngstown State. I don't know if that's going to happen to kind of replace him. The Youngstown State program is not far from getting back to where it was in the 90s, and Bo had 2 good recruiting classes here. But I just think this was an opportunity. I think once you feel that big-time college football atmosphere, I think he wanted to get back into it.
Dana Balash is with us, WFMJ Television in Youngstown, Ohio. You did reference Nebraska, and I think everyone knows how that ended with Bo and the AD there. Was Bo liked at Youngstown State?
Well, Bo grew up here. People knew Bo, and he was welcome back here. And I think Bo told me many years ago when he was at Nebraska in his final 4 years, his family couldn't go to games just because of what was going on in Nebraska. I mean, Bo could go to a restaurant here, sit down, say hello to people. People didn't bother him. It was nowhere compared to Nebraska. This was his hometown. He grew up here. He has a lot of friends here. People welcome Bo Pelini back with open arms. But as we all know, Bo doesn't like to get out in the community, so to speak. I mean, he doesn't like to talk to boosters. He doesn't like to talk in front of people. And I think that may have been just the one part, even though he was in his hometown, he didn't like to do that. In a place like Youngstown, the head coach has to be willing to go out, meet with boosters, be part of the community, and I just don't know if Bo wanted to do that. He's not an outgoing person, and that's no disrespect to him. I got along well with Bo, I still do, and But I just think he was back here. People welcomed him. But, look, when the player made a mistake, he was that fiery guy. In post-game press conferences, if they got beat, he told it the way it was. In 2018, they lost their opener to a non-scholarship Butler team on the final play of the game, and it was probably his worst loss here. That kind of set the tone for 2018. But I think Bo back at the big-time SEC level, especially at a place he's been before, I think he'll do very, very well.
A couple more for you, Dana.
Sure.
A lot of people have the question about Bo's defenses were great in Baton Rouge. Some have wondered, could that translate now some 13 years later? How is he now in the current game as a defensive coach?
Well, what Bo did here is he kind of gave something. When you think of the name Pelini, you think of Bo, you think of defense, and I think Bo as the head coach here his brother was the defensive coordinator in 2017 before he left for a year to go to Bowling Green, and the defense, was very good. Bo kind of had his hand on with it a little bit, but he had a very young staff here, and I think Bo probably was wearing a lot of different hats because the staff was so young, and probably some of his assistant coaches, this is their first job, and they were learning on the job, and Bo kind of had to help them out a little bit. I think his defenses have improved, but defenses obviously are as good as the defensive as your talent is defensively. Offensively, Bo, kind of again gave those responsibilities to maybe some coaches who weren't ready for those positions. But I think his defense, he's a defensive guy. He spent a lot of time on the defensive side in 2018, and the defense, they went to the playoffs in 16. It just wasn't good enough in the Missouri Valley Conference, which they play.
Last thing, recruiting. Did Bo do much of it? How is he there in this current day?
Well, again, he gave a lot of that to his staff to do, and I think that may have been the only one negative thing about Bo. Former head coaches here went out to see players. I'm not sure Bo did that. He tried to recruit locally in this area because we're an hour from Cleveland, an hour from Pittsburgh, so he tried to recruit in this area. But as far as him going out and traveling, I'm not sure I don't think he did much of that. I think Bo kind of centered and let his assistant coaches do that, and I think that's something he will have to do, obviously, at LSU, is improve on the recruiting. But here he tried to stay, in that 100-mile radius of Youngstown and recruit those players. And he did a good job here. This area is known for its high school football. With the population decline here in our area, it's kind of gone that way a little bit. But, Bo, we're waiting, for Saturday or for a Wednesday next week. He's got probably one of the top players in Ohio who verbaled here, who hasn't signed yet, and we're hoping he signs, on Wednesday. But with all this happening, all that's kind of in limbo right now.
Yeah. Dana Balash, WFMJ Television. He's on Twitter at Dana Balash21 if you want to give him a follow. I appreciate a couple of minutes. I'm sure a coaching search in late January is not slow times, those parts, but I appreciate you for carving out a couple of minutes here today.
Matt, I appreciate it. Anytime. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Our pleasure.